I never thought I'd end up here, sharing my story like this, but life has a way of throwing curveballs. I'm Tom, a regular guy in my late 30s, married to Sarah for almost a decade. We were that couple people envied: good careers, a nice home in the suburbs, and a seemingly perfect life. But perfection has a way of being an illusion, and I was about to discover just how fragile our reality was. It all started with small signs. At first, it was the late nights. Sarah had always been career-focused, but the late nights at work began to stretch into weekends. "You know how it is, Tom. Big project coming up," she would say, her voice laced with a hint of irritation when I asked too many questions. I brushed it off, attributing it to the competitive nature of her job as an advertising executive. I tried to be supportive, but deep down, the unease festered. Then there were the little changes at home. She started dressing differently, flirting more with her friends, and her phone was perpetually glued to her side. I noticed new scents on her clothes, scents that weren't mine. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I was just being paranoid. But every time she laughed at her phone or went to run errands but took longer than expected, my gut churned with suspicion. Then came the day I found the muddy dog leash in the back of the closet. We'd never had a dog. The thought struck me like a punch to the gut. The leash was coiled, caked with dirt, as if it had been used recently. I stood there, dumbfounded, holding it like evidence in a crime scene. "What the hell is this?" I muttered to myself, the leash feeling heavy in my hand. It was the first tangible piece of proof that something was terribly wrong. That evening I confronted Sarah. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I tossed the leash beside her. "What's this?" It was accusatory, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. She looked at me, her expression shifting from confusion to annoyance. "What are you talking about? We've never had a dog, Tom. You're being ridiculous." Her denial stung, but what hurt more was the way she dismissed my concern, as if I were crazy. I pressed her, asking if she was hiding something, if there was someone else. Her facade cracked just for a moment. I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes before she snapped back. "You're being paranoid. I don't have time for this nonsense." The confrontation escalated. I hurled accusations, my voice rising, and she fought back with her own denials and bitter words. "You're such a jealous husband," she screamed, her tone sharp. "You never trust me." But there was a part of me that felt defeat. How could I trust someone who was so willing to lie about something so trivial yet so telling? As I stood there, the reality of my situation began to sink in. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak, a storm of emotions swirling within me. It turned out that the leash was just the tip of the iceberg, a symbol of the betrayal that had seeped into the very fabric of our lives. I spent the night tossing and turning, trying to make sense of everything. The woman I loved was hiding something monumental, and I was powerless to stop the avalanche of pain that was about to come crashing down. The next morning, I woke up with a resolve that I hadn't felt before. I needed answers, and I needed a plan. Whatever was going on, I was going to find out the truth. As I brewed my morning coffee, I felt a mix of determination and dread. This was going to be a long road, and I had no idea where it would lead me. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and sadness. I couldn't focus on work, and each time I saw Sarah, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I kept replaying our last fight in my head, her dismissive words echoing like some sort of twisted mantra. "You're being paranoid." I'd never felt more lost. I needed to gather evidence, to find the truth that Sarah was so desperately trying to hide from me. I started to pay closer attention to her daily routine. I noted the times she left for work, the times she came home, and her excuses for the increasingly late nights. I began tracking her phone usage, trying to catch a glimpse of who she was texting or calling. It felt invasive, but I was desperate for clarity. My heart raced with each ping of a new message notification, and I felt like a character in a drama where every twist brought me deeper into the rabbit hole. One afternoon, while Sarah was out, I plucked up the courage to explore her phone. I had always respected her privacy, but I was at a breaking point. I needed to uncover the truth. I waited until the coast was clear, my heart pounding as I grabbed her phone off the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a message that made my stomach drop. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. filled with flirtatious emojis and innuendos that left no room for misinterpretation. Can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel alive. I felt rage rise within me, swirling like a tempest. I didn't even think twice before racing to the bathroom to grab my laptop. After a few frantic searches online, I discovered a social media account linked to that phone number. The profile picture was of a guy, handsome, smug, and far too familiar. His name was Jake, a coworker of Sarah's from the advertising agency. My heart sank. This was it. This was the evidence I needed. I spent the afternoon going down the rabbit hole of their messages. They were planning secret meetups, exchanging intimate details, and more. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, each message pulling me further into despair. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner, for believing that our life was as perfect as it seemed. I was filled with a mixture of anger and heartache. It was a cocktail that sent me spiraling. When Sarah walked through the door that evening, I was already on edge. I had resolved to confront her again, but this time I had the evidence. She greeted me with a bright smile and a casual kiss on the cheek, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "How was your day?" she asked, slipping off her shoes and heading to the kitchen. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. She turned to face me, and I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked. But I could hear the hint of annoyance creeping into her tone. I pulled out my phone, heart racing, and showed her the messages I had uncovered. This is what's wrong, Sarah." Her face went pale as she read the words on the screen. For a brief moment I thought I saw a crack in her armor, but she quickly recovered. "Tom, you're misunderstanding everything. It's not what you think." "Not what I think," I shouted, my voice filling the room. "You're cheating on me, Sarah. How can you even say that?" The confrontation spiraled out of control. She tried to play it off, insisting that it was just harmless flirting, that it didn't mean anything. "It's just a joke, Tom. I didn't mean to hurt you," she cried, but her words fell flat. I felt a surge of anger fueling my next words. "You think this is some kind of game? You're texting another man while I'm here trusting you." I could hardly believe the situation I was in. The woman I had given my heart to was standing in front of me, and yet she felt like a complete stranger. The argument turned into a heated exchange of blame and accusations. I told her how deceived I felt, how foolish I was for not seeing the signs sooner. Her defensive posture only enraged me further. "You've changed, Sarah. This isn't the woman I married," I shouted as the weight of my heartbreak pressed down on me. As the fight continued, I felt pieces of their relationship unraveling, and it was clear that Sarah had no intention of taking responsibility for her actions. I was left grappling with a painful realization. The woman I thought I knew was a facade. That night I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy with betrayal. I felt lost, confused, and utterly heartbroken. Every moment felt like a dagger in my chest. How could I have been so blind? I knew I had to make a decision, and somehow I needed to find a path forward. But for now, all I could do was process the emotional chaos that had become my life. The days that followed felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal, and confusion, all swirling together. I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere. I felt like a ghost, moving through my routine while my heart was shattered. I was haunted by images of Sarah with him, laughing, sharing secrets, and feeling alive without me. I tried to approach Sarah with a sense of calm during the next few days. After the explosive confrontation, we both retreated into our corners, avoiding each other as if speaking would bring back all the ugliness we had just faced. But I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. I needed to figure out what to do next. One evening, I decided to confront her again, but this time I wanted to approach it differently. I wanted to understand, not just the betrayal, but why it had happened in the first place. I sat her down, and instead of accusations, I opted for a conversation. "Sarah, I need to know what's going on in your head. Why did this happen?" She looked at me with an expression that was a mix of guilt and defensiveness. "I don't know, Tom. Things have just been different lately," she admitted, her voice softening. "We've been distant. I got caught up in the excitement of someone showing interest in me, and I didn't know how to handle it. Excitement, I repeated, incredulous. What about our marriage? What about everything we built together? I could feel the anger bubbling up again, but I fought to keep it contained. Didn't I deserve honesty? If you were unhappy, why didn't you talk to me? She stared at me, the silence stretching painfully between us. I thought it was just a phase. I didn't want to burden you with my feelings. And then it just spiraled out of control. I never meant to hurt you, I swear. Her words struck me as hollow. It felt like a flimsy excuse for something far more complex. I wanted to believe her, but the pain of betrayal clouded my judgment. You made choices, Sarah. You chose to hide things from me. You chose him. The discussion turned into a circular argument, and we never landed on any resolution. I felt exhausted, both emotionally and physically. I needed to take a step back to figure everything out. That weekend, I decided to visit my best friend, Mark, for some perspective. He had been a part of my life through thick and thin, and I trusted him to give me an honest opinion. As I settled into his living room, I started spilling my heart out, recounting everything that had happened. I can't believe she would do this to you, man, Mark said, shaking his head in disbelief. You deserve better than that. Have you thought about what you want to do next? I don't know, Mark. I love her, but I don't know if I can trust her anymore, I admitted, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Can I really forgive her for this? Mark leaned back, contemplating my words. You need to think about what's best for you. Sometimes people don't change, even after they break your heart. But you also need to consider if you'd be able to move past this if you stay together. His words resonated with me. I had always prided myself on being the type of person who believes in second chances, but this felt different. It felt like a violation of everything we had built together. I left Mark's place with a new perspective, knowing that I had decisions to make. That night I returned home to Sarah, who was waiting for me like a deer caught in headlights. She could sense the tension in the air, and the uncertainty was palpable. Did you talk to someone? She asked, her voice tentative. Yes, I replied, keeping my tone measured, and I've come to a conclusion. Her eyes widened with anticipation, fear and hope mixing in a volatile cocktail. What does that mean? She asked, almost breathlessly. I think we need some time apart, I said, my chest tightening as I spoke the words. I need space to think about what I want. I can't keep doing this. Her face fell, and I could see the hurt wash over her. Tom, please don't say that. I know I messed up, but we can fix this, I promise. She pleaded, her voice rising with desperation. No, Sarah, I interrupted, trying to keep the conversation from spiraling again. I can't jump back into this like nothing happened. I need to find clarity, and right now, everything feels too muddled. She took a step closer, her eyes glistening with tears. I'll do anything, she whispered. I love you, Tom. Please don't walk away. But as her plea hung in the air, I felt resolute. I needed to prioritize my own well-being, and if that meant stepping away from the relationship, then so be it. I wasn't sure where this path would lead, but I knew I had to protect my heart. That night, I packed a small bag and headed to my brother's place for a while. As I drove away from our home, I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. I couldn't shake the feeling of loss, but deep down, I knew I was making the right decision for myself. It was time to find my own way out of the shadows and into the light. The first few days away from Sarah felt surreal. I had always thought that our home was a sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed and love thrived. But now, it felt like a prison, and leaving was both liberating and terrifying. I found myself at my brother David's apartment, a modest space filled with the scent of takeout and the clutter of bachelor life. He welcomed me with open arms. Sensing the turmoil I was in, "What happened, man?" David asked over a beer, his brow furrowed with concern. "I can't believe Sarah would cheat on you. You two seemed so perfect together." I sighed deeply, the weight of my emotions surfacing again. I thought so too, but I was oblivious to the signs. I thought we were happy, but it was all an illusion. I don't know how I let myself get so blind. David listened intently as I recounted the events, the late nights, the leash in the closet, the texts. Each detail felt like a fresh wound being ripped open. "You deserve better, Tom, you know that, right? You're a good guy, and you shouldn't have to settle for that kind of betrayal," he said, his voice firm and reassuring. As I stayed with David, I began to allow myself to feel the full weight of the betrayal. I was angry, hurt, and confused, but also oddly relieved. For the first time in a long time, I had the space to reflect on what I truly wanted. I went for long runs in the evenings, forcing myself to clear my mind and think without the constant noise of my old life. It helped, but I still felt an ache in my chest, an emptiness where Sarah used to be. One evening, as I was scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a picture of Sarah and Jake together at a bar. It was a casual shot, but they were close, their smiles bright, clearly enjoying each other's company. A wave of anger and heartbreak washed over me as I realized they had moved on without a second thought. I slammed my phone down, feeling bile rise in my throat. How could she be so callous about what we had? That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying every moment of our marriage in my mind. The good times, the laughter, and the love we shared felt overshadowed by the betrayal. As the sun began to rise, I made a decision. I couldn't let her be the only one to define our relationship. I needed to take control of my narrative, and I would no longer be a victim of her choices. I decided to meet with Sarah for a final conversation. I needed closure, a way to express everything that had been pent up inside me. So I called her and suggested we meet at a cafe halfway between our places. "I think we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. When the day arrived, my heart raced as I entered the cafe. It felt surreal to see her again, sitting at a corner table, her fingers nervously tapping on her phone. She looked up as I approached, her face a mix of hope and apprehension. "Tom, I'm glad you're here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's just talk, Sarah," I replied, taking a seat across from her. The air was thick with tension as we exchanged glances, both of us unsure of where to begin. "I've missed you," she said quietly, her eyes pleading for understanding. "Have you?" I asked, my voice laced with skepticism. "Because it seems like you've moved on pretty easily." Her expression faltered, and I could see genuine remorse in her eyes. "I made a terrible mistake, I know that. I thought I could ignore the problems we were having, but then I got caught up in something stupid. I'll always regret it." Her words cut through me, but I was tired of tears and apologies. "I can't just forget what happened, Sarah. You hurt me in a way I never thought possible." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling, "and I'm so sorry. I've been trying to figure out how to make this right, but I understand if you can't forgive me. I just wish I could take it all back." "Wishing doesn't change the past," I said, my heart heavy. "I need to know why you didn't come to me when you felt things were off. Why did you choose to cheat instead?" She looked down, shame washing over her features. "I was scared, Tom. Scared of losing you, scared of not being happy. I thought I could find a thrill somewhere else, but I only ended up hurting the person I love the most." "Love?" I countered, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. "What kind of love leads to betrayal? It's not love when you hide things, when you seek excitement outside of your marriage." "I know, and I can't change what I did," she said, tears streaming down her face, "but I want to make it right. I want to try again." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my decision hanging in the air. "You need to understand something, Sarah. Trust is built over time, and you shattered ours. I don't know if I can ever see you the same way again." As we sat in silence, the reality of our situation hung heavily between us. I could sense the void that had developed and the struggle to bridge it. I realized that this conversation, while necessary, wouldn't change the fact that I needed to prioritize myself. "I don't know what the future holds for us," I finally said, my voice steady. "But for now, I need to focus on healing. This space is necessary for me to figure out what I want." Her face fell, and I could see her heart breaking before my eyes. "I'll wait for you, Tom. I'll do anything to show you I can change." But I shook my head, feeling a mix of compassion and resolve. "It's not about you doing anything. It's about me finding myself again." As I left the cafe, the weight of our conversation lingered in my heart. I knew the road ahead would be uncertain, but I felt a flicker of hope. I was taking steps toward reclaiming my life, and no one would take that away from me again. The days turned into weeks, and as I settled into this new chapter of my life, I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of my marriage. I threw myself into work, focusing on projects that fueled my creativity and passion. I took up running again, feeling the rush of endorphins wash over me as I pushed my limits. Each mile felt like a step away from the pain Sarah had caused and toward a future that was entirely mine. During this time, I also leaned on my friends and family for support. Mark and David checked in frequently, listening to my frustrations and encouraging me to keep moving forward. They reminded me that I was not defined by my marriage or the betrayal I had endured. I started to feel a sense of liberation in my solitude, a newfound appreciation for the choices I could make without having to consider anyone else's feelings. But there were still moments when the weight of the past crept back in. I'd see a couple holding hands and it would sting, a sharp reminder of what I had lost. I often found myself staring at my phone, contemplating whether I should reach out to Sarah, but I resisted. I knew that engaging with her would only drag me back into the turmoil I was trying to escape. One rainy afternoon, while I was browsing through some old photos on my laptop, I stumbled upon a picture from our wedding day. We looked so happy, glowing with love and excitement about the future. My heart ached as I remembered the promises we had made to each other. The juxtaposition of that day against the present felt like a cruel joke. Just then, my phone buzzed with a message. It was Sarah, and my heart raced as I opened it. "Can we talk? I've been doing a lot of thinking and want to explain more about what happened." I hesitated but then quickly typed out a response. "I think it's best if we give each other space right now. I need time to heal." Her reply was immediate, filled with desperation. "Please, Tom, I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I just want to talk. I need you to know how serious I am about changing." Part of me wanted to hear her out to see if she had truly reflected on her actions, but another part of me was adamant about maintaining my distance. I knew that the moment I allowed her back into my life, I risked reopening wounds that were still fresh. Days turned into a week, and I continued to focus on my own journey. One evening, while I was out for a run, I caught sight of a local charity event promoting animal adoption. It was a small gathering, but something about it intrigued me. I stopped to chat with some volunteers and learned that they were looking for foster families for dogs and cats. Before I knew it, I was signing up to be a foster. I realized that caring for an animal would not only bring joy into my life but also help me heal. I brought home a scruffy little terrier named Max, who was as energetic and loving as he was needy. As I watched him bound around my apartment, I felt a warmth envelop me, a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in a long time. Over the next few weeks, Max became my companion and my motivation to get out of the house. The joy he brought into my life was infectious. Every day I took him for long walks, and he quickly became a regular fixture in my life. I found myself smiling again, laughing, and even finding joy in the little things. Then, one evening, as I was getting dinner ready, my phone rang. It was Sarah. I had been avoiding her calls, but something in her tone made me pick up. "Tom, can we please meet? I really need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I could sense desperation in her voice, but I also remembered how far I had come. "I don't know, Sarah. I'm not sure meeting is a good idea." "Please," she begged. "I promise it's important. Just hear me out." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a small park near my apartment. As I arrived, my heart raced with anxiety. I didn't know what to expect from this meeting, and I was cautiously optimistic. When I saw her sitting on a bench, a familiar sense of sadness washed over me. She looked different, vulnerable, with dark circles under her eyes and a somber expression that hinted at the weight she had been carrying. "Thank you for coming," she said as I approached. "Let's just talk," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she began, her voice wavering. I realized that I was running away from my problems instead of facing them. I got caught up in a moment and lost sight of what was truly important. "I've been talking to a therapist, and I'm committed to making changes in my life." I listened, my mind racing. This was the first time she had mentioned seeking help, and part of me wanted to believe that she was sincere. "That's good, Sarah," I replied cautiously. "But it doesn't change what you did." "I know," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now. I just want you to know that I'm taking this seriously. I want to do better for myself and for you." Her words struck a chord, but the hurt still lingered. It's not that easy, Sarah. Trust is earned and you've broken mine. I need time to process all of this. I understand and I'm willing to wait. I just wanted you to know that I'm working on myself," she said, her voice filled with emotion. As we sat in silence, I could see her vulnerability shining through, and for the first time I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe her journey toward healing could also lead to a path of reconciliation for us, but I still wasn't ready to dive back into the chaos. "I need to focus on my own healing first," I finally said, my voice steady. "I can't rush this. We both need time." She nodded, accepting my decision without protest. "I get it, and I'll wait as long as it takes." As I walked away from that meeting, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me. I still had my doubts, but maybe there was a chance for us to rebuild, however distant that seemed. I knew that this journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of possibility. It wasn't just about healing from the pain. It was about finding a way forward, one step at a time. As I continued my journey of healing, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned through this tumultuous experience. The pain of betrayal had forced me to confront my own identity and needs, and while I wasn't sure what the future held for Sarah and me, I knew I was not the same person I had been before. The weeks turned into months, and I focused on fostering my bond with Max. He became my confidant and my source of joy. I loved our long walks and lazy afternoons on the couch. His playful antics had a way of brightening even the darkest days, and I appreciated the uncomplicated love he offered. I could feel my heart slowly mending, layer by layer, as I embraced this new chapter. Sarah and I kept in touch, and her commitment to self-improvement was evident. She continued going to therapy, and she often shared her progress. With me, I listened, cautiously optimistic. There were times I felt anger flare up again, but I reminded myself that healing wasn't linear. We all had our struggles, and I had to give her space to grow. One afternoon, as I sat on my balcony with Max, enjoying the sun, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Can we meet again? I want to show you something," she wrote. I hesitated but agreed, curious about what she had to share. When we met at the park again, I could see the difference in her demeanor. She looked stronger, more confident. As we settled on a bench, she held up a piece of paper. "I've been working on myself and I wanted to share my progress with you," she said, her voice filled with determination. I took the paper and my eyes widened as I read the words. It was a letter of accountability, detailing her commitment to change, the steps she was taking to pursue her own happiness, and her promise to rebuild trust. "I know I messed up, but I'm willing to fight for this," she said, her eyes locked onto mine. I was taken aback. This was the first time I had seen her take full responsibility without excuses. "This is a lot, Sarah," I replied, feeling a mix of admiration and skepticism. "But promises are just words. Trust is built over time." "I know," she responded, her voice steady. "But I'm ready to prove it to you. I don't expect anything from you right now, but I hope we can work towards something together. I'm willing to put in the effort." I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time I felt a glimmer of hope. "We'll take it slow," I told her, my heart racing. "I'm not ready to jump back into anything, but if you're committed to changing, then I'm open to seeing where this goes." We spent the next few weeks rebuilding our friendship, taking baby steps toward healing. We met for coffee, shared our thoughts, and slowly pieced together the fragments of our relationship. It felt different this time, less about perfection and more about honesty and vulnerability. As we connected, I could see the changes in her. She was more open about her feelings and insecurities, and I found myself softening toward her. Our conversations felt lighter, and I began to remember the reasons I had fallen in love with her in the first place. One evening, as we walked through the park with Max, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "You know, I wasn't sure if I could ever trust you again," I admitted. "But watching you work on yourself has been inspiring. It gives me hope." She smiled, the warmth of her expression melting away the last of my doubts. "Thank you for giving me a chance to show you I can change. I know it will take time, but I'm committed to this journey." As I looked into her eyes, I realized that while the road ahead would not be easy, it was one I was willing to navigate. We both had wounds to heal, but perhaps our shared journey could lead us back to a stronger connection. In the months that followed, we continued to nurture our relationship slowly. We focused on honesty and communication, learning to trust one another again. It was a process with ups and downs, but I felt a renewed sense of hope. I was no longer the man who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was a man who had learned to prioritize his own healing and happiness first. As I sat on my balcony one evening, Max curled up by my side, I reflected on how far I had come. I had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I had learned the importance of self-love and the power of second chances, not just for Sarah but for myself. Life may not be perfect, but it was mine, filled with possibilities. Whatever the future held for Sarah and me, I was ready to embrace it, one day at a time.